we understand what investors want. Now comes the hard part. We've got to build it, right? And I know that most people, most entrepreneurs are not former CPAs like my dad or former investment bankers like myself. Most entrepreneurs don't come from a financial background, yet they get thrown into financial modeling as if they understand all this financial jargon and they've got a huge background in working in Excel. So we're going to talk right now about how, as a non-financial person, you can actually develop a credible financial model. So step number one is don't overcomplicate what a financial model really needs to be. I told you kind of the 5 dream elements of an investor, which we saw before, but really those can be broken down into 3 areas within your financial model. One is the assumptions. Then the next piece is the calculations themselves. And then the last piece is the outputs, right? And so as you're thinking about how to structure and build your financial model, ask yourself first, what am I trying to create? Am I trying to create assumptions? In which case, maybe that particular tab of your financial model needs to have sections on it where you've color-coded the data entry points. The reason that it's important to separate your assumptions is because you not only want to be able to easily identify them, you want to be able to easily change them. And ultimately, when an investor asks, well, wait a minute, what did you think you were going to spend on Facebook ads? You want to be able to find that number pretty quickly instead of having to dig through a bunch of formulas to make that happen. So separating your assumptions into 1 or more tabs can be useful, but even within those tabs, having sections that are, for example, color-coded, and you'll see in the example I'm going to show you later, that's what my choice is, can be really useful, right? Now, once you've got your assumptions separated, then you want to be able to identify where the calculations in your model are happening. Because that way, if you run into a problem, if you're finding an error, again, you're not digging through 15 different tabs trying to find the one formula that's creating a problem. And so a lot of times it's easy to create a calculations tab or worksheet that holds each of the calculations so that you know where to look if you do run into trouble. A couple of key elements of your calculations tabs. I know a lot of people are tempted to hard code, right? So I'm just going to go in here and I'm just going to hard code my formula plus $5,000, my formula plus $2,000. The challenge if you do that is that then you can never find what your true assumptions were because they're buried in your calculations. So although it may be quicker in the moment to do that, I would encourage you to be a little more rigorous with yourself and to try to keep your assumptions in your assumptions page and your calculations clean. One other thing I would tell you, and this is a place where I see every single entrepreneur stumble, make sure your calculations are correct. And this is where having an advisor or someone on your team who wasn't involved in the creation of the model just vet the numbers can be really useful, because people with experience can oftentimes spot where a model error is because the result numbers just don't look right. The last piece that I would encourage you to do, instead of having huge long formulas that try to get all the way from a single assumption to a revenue number, is to break your calculations into pieces. And again, we'll see what this looks like a little bit later when we jump into an example. Now, once you've isolated your assumptions, you've got your calculations set up and working correctly, then you can start to generate outputs. And the beauty of this is that if you have your calculations and assumptions independently set up, you can generate all kinds of outputs, not just your pro forma P&L, your cash analysis. You can generate that milestone-based ask that we're talking about. You could even generate a valuation, and you can generate charts and graphs to your heart's content. So I would suggest as a first step, please don't overcomplicate putting together a model.